Welcome to this session looking at teaching languages at second level. There is a PowerPoint version of this available to you so that you can access all hyperlinks. Generally, all the pictures are hyperlinked. The examples given will be predominantly in French for this session. However, there are resources for other languages available through different authorities' websites and through the Northern Alliance websites too. And the ideas will be applicable to all languages. Okay, so we're going to start off with looking at the big picture again. And if you've seen my earlier sessions on early and first, some of this will be familiar. If you haven't seen them, I recommend you have a look because I am trying to cover something different in each of these sessions. However, they do build on each one, and some of the ideas from the early and the first would equally be relevant and appropriate for second level. So we'll look at the big picture, we'll look at what and how we teach things as transition and particularly moving into secondary, and how we collect evidence and how we look at progress of our learners, and finally, how we can engage parents. We're going to start off with a wee quiz, and if you are doing this live, you'll be given the link. If you're not doing it live, unfortunately, this quiz will not be available to you. So have a go at the quiz. The quiz is using Slido, which is a great free website that you could use as well with your class to get instant feedback on how the learners are feeling about anything, or also to organise a quiz such as this. You can use other websites such as Kahoot as well, and it's more language-based, and Quizlets is great. The quiz focuses on French culture and also language, and it's just an example of what you could do as a warm-up, icebreaker, or as a plenary session with your learners, or even setting it for homework. The questions have multiple choice answers. I've just given 2, but you could also create quizzes with no multiple choice and make it a wee bit trickier. My questions were in English to be inclusive to everybody, but you could also make them in the language that you're learning. Okay, so the quiz was just a wee warm-up to get us prepared to think about the things we might cover at this level. And here we've got the key expectations in terms of 1+2, just a very short summary here. These are also the same expectations that we have in the CFE experiences and outcome documents as well. And as you can see, they bring everything together that's been covered in primary. So we are trying to get them to give a presentation, talk with one another, use classroom and understand classroom instructions, enjoy a song or poem or story, put the pronunciation rules into practice and be able to read aloud, be able to use comprehension activities and decoding to understand a short text, and then to write about themselves. This can be broken down. If you look at the document, expected outcomes for P1 start, you click here, it'll be broken down into what you'd expect at the end of P5, 6 and 7 in a bit more detail. So teaching languages at second level, very much like early and first, we will continue with embedding language in daily routines, focusing on language that learners know, greetings, emotional check-in, colours, numbers, lunches, PE warm-ups, things like that. Obviously, when we get to second level, learners will also be learning in L3, but I'm not going to focus on that here. I'm just going to be looking at the L2. So hopefully the daily routines will continue on a regular basis, and I have put some links here for each one of these different areas for you to have a look at. The daily routines gives the learners a chance to practice the language that they're learning, but you may well feel at this level it's probably not enough, and you may well have to move towards longer, discrete lessons. And that will depend on your individual school and your individual context, whether that's once a week, whether it's every day, a couple times a week. So it's impossible to say how long a period of time that would be. But it needs to be enough to be able to get your learners to experience level 2 outcomes, experiences and outcomes by the end of P7. So there will be every authority will have its own resources that it uses, and will have a planner. If you use Power Language, for instance, or Camembert or High Five, each one will have its own language planner. I've put one here on the Highland, it's available through the Highland website because it's accessible by everybody. So if you put an overview of topics, if you click here, then that will take you to topics that are covered through the Power Language Schools website, but it gives you an idea of the sorts of things that you might like to cover in your own schools at this level. The idea is very much to move learning forward, so not just to revise the same topics that we've covered from P1 to 4, but maybe recycling the language and doing it in a new context, something that's different, that's motivating. If you've covered my family in earlier down the school, then doing that again in P5, 6 or 7 will need to be done in a careful way so it engages your learners. So you can see how in Power Language, P5 is a revision year, consolidating everything that's been covered from P1 to 4, so it's almost transitioning, moving from I very much to he or she, so presentation from the first person to the third person, developing grammar there and language structures. P6, we're moving away from just looking at myself to looking at my country, the world around me, so not just where I live in terms of my town, but moving beyond that. And P7, then we're trying to put it into practice and moving to looking at traveling and going, for instance, in this case to France, and trying to put all that has been learned into a wee project. Okay. We also need to ensure that we're linking it to wider learning, so looking at IDL potentially, or linking across different curricular areas and bringing things together. And there are different themed activity cards through the Northern Alliance website that you can look at that are useful for early or first, but maybe bring things together more for second level. They're in French, Spanish, Gaelic, German, and if we just click on the French ones, for instance, there are different topics such as animals, culture, looking at artists, body. So trying to bring different subject areas and different learning that they might have done in their language together in some fun activities and projects that could be done at home or at school. And you can see them here. Okay. Here's an example of the topic of healthy eating, and a group of teachers looked at this and thought about how they could link it across the curriculum and include languages but other areas, and also different sorts of language structures. I've put some other things in here, for instance, a French menu for Highland Council, but every authority will have their own, just to show how you can link a topic in with daily routines. And then you might like to link through to watching a wee video to actually teach a language. And Education Scotland actually have a learning map on healthy eating if you want a little bit more detail. So there's lots of resources out there. Education Scotland have a series of learning maps for second, but also for first and early if you don't have any other websites or subscriptions to courses that you're using. Okay, so we really need to think at this stage about developing all 4 skills, and there is a progression framework from Education Scotland which is incredibly useful, and it has success criteria and learning intentions, and if you click here you'll be able to access it. It's worth having a look at that because it brings together the benchmarks, the EASYOs and sort of progression, and builds in and shows what's different from one year to the next. I've tried to summarize it here, and I put different skills together So previously I've linked listening and talking, but now I'm going to link listening and reading as skills where children are understanding different types of text. So working on those sorts of comprehension skills. And I've combined talking and writing because those are the productive skills where the children are manipulating language to express themselves. So I think it works well to build them together. So I've pulled out the key points from all these different documents to sort of give you an overview and things for you to bear in mind. All of these things will be written into your courses already, but I think it's just bringing them to the forefront. So when we're looking at progression at this level, we need to be thinking about the length of the different texts, the range of language, the complexity of language structures and how well learners understand them, how accurate and confident they are, how they use their own language, their L1, to help them, and do they have the skills to be able to work things out for themselves? Are they equipped with transferable language skills? And do they know what support to use in such as a bilingual dictionary? So these are the key things that we need to build in throughout second level to prepare them for going to secondary school. And what I've done here is I've taken some resources that Education Scotland have produced looking at progression and looked at the different skills. The images here are hyperlinked, so they'll be able to take you directly to the resource and you can have a look at that in a bit more detail, or just click here to see them. So different ideas that you might not have thought about, doing a reading activity, but doing it as a game with odd one out, making that into a dictionary activity, the dictionary derby, looking at creating wanted posters so that writing has a purpose, it has an aim, and giving children a word bank to help them. And then looking at talking and listening and developing pronunciation through tongue twisters. So some fun activities, but lots of thought built in as to the skills that we're progressing. It's also important to look ahead to third level because children are, transitioning forwards through to secondary school. And again, Education Scotland has resources for this, and you can see them here. And I've just highlighted a couple of different things. I wanted to look at reading because I wanted to look at sort of reading familiar texts, talking about likes and dislikes with school, and a great activity is highlighting at that point. Moving forward to looking at unfamiliar texts here, where the learners might have to have a bit more support and complete a gap fill activity, so only focus on key points and not get overwhelmed by everything. Over here, we've got a little presentation, or a written presentation, or spoken, about myself. And learners by the end of second level have to be able to do this, give a short presentation. And that's a really nice way of doing it as a wee poster. And then perhaps when they go to the secondary school, getting them to present themselves to their peers on their transition day. Inevitably, we will continue with games, songs, stories and poems, as we have done in early and first, and things that you have used lower down the school would be just as appropriate to use at upper school, and maybe just adjusting them, giving less support, or making it more competitive, for instance, or increasing the complexity of language and what you expect from your learners. I put a few on here that maybe I use more at second level. And there's lots of games available, so if you click here you'll find a huge amount, but I put a couple in here that I particularly like. And I think maybe we're moving from whole class games at this point to working in small groups where the learners become the callers or the teacher, if you like, and working with a partner more as well. Stories, there's lots of stories that learners can access independently. I've put some here that are more appropriate for second level, and predominantly ones in French. There are ones in other languages as well. Some of them are animations like the BBC Bite Size, and some of them are video clips with sound files like French Experiment, and some are ebooks like BookBox and Storyweaver. And then it's really up to you what you do with these, whether it's just for pure enjoyment, whether you turn them into comprehension activities as well. If we're looking at poetry, there's great resources on the Silk website for creative writing and poetry. And so I've put some there. And there's also resources for you to share poems with them. Silk has actually selected certain poems that might be useful for you to have a look at. Songs should hopefully continue to be an important part of learning. Children can listen to them, join in with them, and have fun using them as comprehension activities. And so I've put a few here. Basher and Friends and Number Rock are a bit more upbeat and rap-like. And BBC Virtually there is a little video clip series on the BBC with some really good songs. It's about a boy trying to learn French online with people in France. I think what's key is it's not really just about what you're using, it's about how you're using it, what you're expecting of your learners. And if you keep in mind the things I mentioned earlier, then you won't go far wrong with whatever it is that you're choosing to use. Developing intercultural awareness is still an important part of language learning. Expectations are slightly different and progress along from early and first. We might just look at similarities and differences. Here we're trying to get the children to work in groups and give a wee presentation in their own language, but also supported by the language that they're learning. We're also expecting them to be able to do a bit more research independently, and maybe think about countries outside of just the country of the language they're learning, like France, and moving that to Francophone countries. So there's loads of resources, different ways of doing it. You might be doing it with quizzes. You might look at a film to look at the culture. You might look at presentations or websites in English, video clips, and you might even start to look at authentic websites and get learners to see, so if they can see any keywords. I think it's really important at this stage to harness learners' natural curiosity and develop their confidence and get them to be language detectives. And so there's a great wee video here that I always suggest you have a wee look at, just a couple of 5 minutes or so of a teacher showing how she does this in her class, looking at keywords and highlighting in a quite complex text. And I've put a little video here of learners, an authentic video, talking about different sports and giving their opinions. And it might be interesting for you to think about how you would use that in class and get your learners to be language detectives. Lightbulb Languages has some great reading activities linked to different topics that you might cover in primary and that can be used to help develop these skills. Building on, confidence, we also need to create independence in our learners, getting them to use bilingual dictionaries to help them, and translation tools, perhaps for very short key phrases, not big chunks of text. And these can be online, or dictionaries can also be hard copies. We need to try and build in choice with learners about what they're learning, how they're learning. We might start to get learners to work a bit more independently using online games, and I've put some here for them. And you might create activities for them yourselves in things like Quizlet or WordWall. And learners might create things to share with their peers, such as a quiz in Kahoot, for instance. If we want our learners to be independent, we need to teach them pronunciation rules and grammar so that they can manipulate language. That's obviously very specific to each language. I've put some examples here for French, but I don't think it's something that we should shy away from. I think we need to share that with learners so that they can deal with unfamiliar text and be able to read aloud or be able to express themselves fully. And it's great to get learners to try to peer and self-assessment activities. Might not be able to do it for all language elements, but certainly a checklist for content would help them to ensure that they're including what they need to. You might choose to do that more towards the end of a unit of work when you're looking at a holistic type assessment. So there's a lot going on at the moment with DYW, developing a young workforce, and I think it's really important we develop these skills in our learners related to languages from primary, and we also develop learners' creativity. And I put the two together because I am looking at skills which I think are transferable, which they can use not just in languages but throughout their lives and in different subjects. So I've put some digital skills over here, apps which are particularly good and websites for language learning, some literacy skills, so using their L1 but taking that into their L2 and their L3, and then also the sort of project approach, sort of rich task approach where we bring things together. This is an example of a wee presentation I've created just about me in English, and it brings together ICT skills of using Google Slides with an app, Picolage, and taking photos, and then using a voice recorder to record myself and then bringing it all together. And that's the sort of thing that we should be aiming for or trying to work towards with our second level learners. Cross-curricular resources are great for trying to develop language in new contexts and continually ensure that we engage our learners and have relevant and motivating topics that are interesting to them. Edinburgh Zoo and Highland Wildlife Park have created great resources, some of which are free in different languages, and they bring together basic language, as you can see here, like numbers and colours, but they then look at linking it in with the science, so looking at adaptations, for instance, of snails in francophone countries, and then have a wee game. So great resources there. Passeport pour la Francophonie, a great online resource, links different French-speaking countries with different curricular areas and learning French. Tons of online resources with ebooks and quizzes and presentations and videos and ideas that you can do in your own classrooms with different learning maps. Global issues and languages, if you're more interested in looking at that, then you can look at the issues of sustainability, and there are some resources for languages for second level if you click the link, linking to topics that learners would normally be learning. And if you're more interested in taking a CLIL approach where we teach a topic, such as volcanoes, that we're learning, but we do it in another language, then you could look at ELAPS, and there are free resources here to support a soft CLIL approach. Okay, transition is key. I could do a whole presentation on transition. So I put a few key questions here for you to think about, and I've hyperlinked the images to various resources to support you. So you need to think obviously about preparing learners to move to secondary school, and then think about how we share information with secondary colleagues, and what appropriate context may be to support them. So you might look at the context of school and moving to secondary school in P7, or that might be done at the start of S1. You might look at a project, and there are different projects available, such as Asterix chez les Pictes from Education Scotland, and that's a transition resource that could span end of P7 and into S1. And you might want to look at creating some sort of assessment task, maybe based around the idea of presentation. And there's a resource here all about me from the Northern Alliance to support you with that in different languages. Another way of sharing learning is to perhaps look at understanding of standards with secondary colleagues, and working out that you all have a kind of an agreed understanding of what's expected, looking perhaps at your own pupils' work. I think successful transition really depends on these 4 things, and I will be doing a separate session on transition later in the year, and you'll be able to access resources for that. Assessment, monitoring and tracking is key so that you know where your learners are so you can help them progress. It's important for them to know where they are, and it's important for the next teacher to have that information as well. We need to always look back and find out where learners have come from and where they're going to, and share information. So I've put some information on here, some questions to help you. The Language Magician is a lovely little website that's free, that tests language knowledge, which your children might like to do individually. And if you want to look at more sort of holistic assessment tasks, if you click here, is a great resource. You might have something like this, an I CAN document, which you could traffic light, or the learners could traffic light themselves. And you could also traffic light it to show what you've covered and share this with the next teacher. So it'd be a great thing to share with your S1 teachers, and maybe meeting with them would be a good opportunity to do this, and passing on any work. Although learners are becoming more independent, it's still great if we can support learners at home with their learning, and there are different ways to do this. There's a fantastic virtual classroom for second level. There are little video clips that learners can access here. There's a French course that families can do at home. And there are little ebooks and even homework activities. There are tons of supporting resources. There's just a couple here for you. It totally depends on your authority and what your authority is subscribed to. If you want some professional development for yourselves, then the Northern Alliance has a great hub for you to access all our resources from training. And these are my top tips that I would suggest. So we continue with our daily routines, have discrete lessons, and widen out to wider learning. We develop the core skills to equip our learners in language learning. We're looking at much more at how language works with phonics and grammar. And we're making sure that our learners are engaged, that they are curious and independent. And of course, above all, we are having fun. It should still be interactive, and the learners should be enjoying it. Loads of key documents for you. Have a wee look at them if you'd like a bit more information to help you with your planning. If you've got any questions, then please get in touch. thea.palou@highland.gov.uk. And if you're in the session, there's a quick survey for you to access and a quick Slido question here as well. And here you can access resources for different authorities. So here are all the different resources for Highland, Aberdeenshire, and Argyll and Bute. Thank you.